What's up, guys? It's Heat. So this is going to be a hardcore elite Outlander guide. So I just I beat hardcore elite the other day at level 55. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about my build and the strategy that I used, the spec and my equipment. So first of all, I went with a all casting Outlander. So the pistol is basically there just for the stats on it. Most of my attacks are casting, except at the beginning where you don't have much of an option but to attack because your mana is starved a lot. So one of the most important spells is Cursed Daggers. It does damage reduction. So any sort of damage reduction is good on hardcore. And by the time I beat it, it's up to 30%. So this is very good. It also does knockback, and which gives you time to actually sort of think about your next move, and to create distance between you and your enemies, which is also good. So actually, this is probably the most important in my opinion because the damage reduction is so much, and it's key to survivability. Rune Vault is also good. Creates distance. You can never get trapped or blocked in because you can vault through enemies, so you'll never be stuck in some things. And you can use it to react to projectiles if you're fast enough to do that. The main damage spell is Glaive Throw, and this is good because it reduces movement speed and it does a lot of damage. I have an Outlander on a non-hardcore Outlander at level 100 and with Glaive Throw max, and it does ridiculous damage, like hundreds of thousands. Dodge Mastery is important in survivability. You want your dodge very high, you want your block chance high. Right now, without any meter, my dodge is 57, and with meter it goes up pretty high. I'm not sure if it's maxed yet. I can't remember, but it's pretty close to max, 75. Share the Wealth is also important because it takes a percentage of your charge bar and gives it to yourself as well. So it not only applies to your pets and allies, but to yourself. Repulsion Hex is important. Anytime something gets close to you, it pushes them back. You can face tank things, especially if you combine Repulsion Hex with Stone Pact. You can just kind of sit even in a champion's face and just cast Glaive Throw all day. Stone Pact is important because of the percent to all armor. This is a huge survivability thing. The only thing that's kind of awkward about it is if you cast it, it has a countdown, and if you step outside of the circle, so it doesn't reset. As you notice, it counts down, and then it resets when it hits 1. So if you step outside of the circle at 2, you're still at 2, so it can run out. If you step out at 1, you'll step out at 1 and it goes away immediately. So unless you step out at 3, you don't have much movement outside of it, so you kind of have to stay in the circle. Shadow Mantle is good because of the Reflect Missile. A percent to Reflect Missile. The only thing that's bad about it is the cooldown is kind of long. It's 30 seconds. So when you first invest a skill point in it, it's 30 seconds. So you have 20 seconds between when it runs out and when you can cast it again. So you have to use it wisely. I usually use it against champions or boss fights. Master of Elements, this is a great offensive passive because it increases your elemental damage. And as a casting Outlander, all you're doing is elemental damage and primarily poison damage. And this gives you twice the poison damage over all the other elements, so it's very key. So those are the primary spells on this caster Outlander. In terms of stat distribution, I try to keep vitality and dexterity fairly close to each other, and I didn't start investing focus points until kind of I think at the end of Act 1, and then once in a while in Act 2, and then at the end of Act 2 sort of putting in more and more focus, because you are casting and you are doing elemental damage. I would say by Act 1, you should have, by the end of Act 1, you should have at least, I would say 30 vitality. By the end of Act 2, 60, and going into Act 3, probably 90. So let's take a look at the items that I was looking for in the socket and the unique socketables and such. Oh, the other thing is also by the end of so going into Act 2, I'd recommend at least having 2,000 HP, and going into Act 3 at least 5,000 with damage reduction, something like 5%. But with the Outlander, farming for damage reduction isn't as important because you have cursed daggers, which gives you a lot of damage reduction. But inherent damage reduction on your gear, I would say at least 5% going into Act 3, and at least 5,000. By the time I beat it, I had 7,100 HP. And all my items, for example, these boots have health on them, plus 420. So all my items have health. And this one has damage reduction, the Eye of Grell. This one has over 400 health, 200 health. I also use chance to reflect missiles because that's important for survivability. This has over 300 health, over 400 blood ember chips, etc. So you kind of get the point. You need to have a lot of health and defensive stats on your armor. The other thing, because this is a casting engine, casting Outlander, you need mana recovery. So that's very important. So you can actually cast a lot and quick, and so you don't have to burn mana as much. When you actually use the mana pot, it's actually, you can, depending on what you're casting, you can infinitely cast it. In terms of the non-character specific spells, concentration is good because of mana recovery, and blocking is very important. Elemental overload, I think it's elemental overload. It gives you increased resistances to elemental damage, is pretty good, but I don't like to have too many things in my skill bar, because then you sort of end up micromanaging your character, and I think damage reduction is enough. Oh, it's called elemental protection. So. But blocking is definitely important. You can re-roll the world and over until you get some sort of blocking 2, blocking 3. Another important thing I think I mentioned is the damage reduction. So the Eye of Grell. I have, on my gear right now, I have 8%. So 6 from the Eye of Grell, and I think the Eye of the Manticore, yeah. All damage by 2%. So that is the Hardcore Elite guide. I suppose if you have any questions, drop me a comment.